Hi, so today we're talking about grooming. Really uncomfortable topic, but I think it's really important that survivors of sexual trauma and other things which they may have been groomed for really understand the process of that so that it can help kind of relieve some of that guilt, some of that shame, some of that responsibility that they may be inaccurately taking on, and those things. So, with grooming, you've got kind of this triangle thing, this abuse triangle, and it starts with faulty thinking on the perpetrator's part, and that works its way up to deviant sexual desire. And then that works down to access. And so with that triangle, that's kind of how you complete this grooming process. So let's take each of those things in parts. So with faulty thinking, that's where you've got the perpetrator saying, to themselves, well, they sought me out, I was teaching them, I wasn't hurting them, there wasn't any intercourse. This has been going on for centuries. There's lots of countries that do this. The child never said no. The child never said stop. So that's where you start to see that faulty thinking, where they're not taking on accountability. They're not taking on responsibility for their actions, for their thoughts, for their desires, all of those things. So then we work our way up to deviant sexual desire. And that's where you start to enter the grooming process. So the perpetrators are going to start grooming children at this stage. Also important is that perpetrators are going to start to groom gatekeepers. So those individuals who are taking care of the children, parents, grandparents, aunt, uncle, maybe the church, maybe the school, anybody who's in direct care of the child, they're going to start to groom them so that they will believe that the perpetrator is somebody who's who cares for the child, who is beneficial to be in the child's life, things of that nature. Perpetrators are going to be seen as trustworthy people. They're going to be seen as respectable people. They're going to be seen as people who engage in ways that others don't, meaning they're really kid friendly and they have a good connection with the kids. It's going to be surprising a lot of the time if you ever find out who a perpetrator is. Oh my goodness, I never would have thought that person was doing this. And that's part of the grooming technique, is that they have a special skill to be close with children and to not be suspected. Perpetrators are also going to select children who they can prepare for sexual interaction. So it's not going to be those kiddos who are going to say no. It's not going to be those kiddos who have really strong foundation, who know you're not supposed to touch me there. You're not supposed to do that. I know to get away from you if you do this. Or those who have a really great support system and I need to talk to my mom about this. I don't feel really comfortable about this. So they're going to be looking for individuals, for kiddos who are on the fringe, who are lonely, who don't have a very good support system, who are missing vital emotional needs at home, at school, in the community, wherever that may be. So then we go to access, the access part of the triangle. So perpetrators are intentionally looking for trusted time alone with that child. And this is where you get that they're not only grooming the child themselves, but they're grooming the gatekeepers as well. This person wants to be able to have access to the child without it being suspected, without it being awkward, without it being odd. And so to gain that access, to gain that trusted time alone, that's where you're seeing that grooming process gradually happen over time. So with gaining access, perpetrators are going to look for opportunities, volunteering. They're going to look for opportunities in their careers. They're going to look for opportunities with family members, with friends, other close relationships. They're going to create an appearance of them being kind, funny, trustworthy, again, really having a special connection with kids. They may even appear as though they meet the child's needs much better than somebody else does. When they select a child, again, it's important to remember that these children are not the ones who understand body safety, who understand good boundaries, meaning I know who to say yes and no to. I know in what instances to say yes or no. I know how to say yes and no and to be taken seriously. And I know why to say yes and no. So kiddos who have that good foundation and understanding of boundaries and body safety, they're not going to be easily groomed, so they're not going to be targets. Again, this is coming from, it could be families that do have either an abusive situation happening, that have abandonment stuff happening, that have addiction happening, that have all kinds of different scenarios that are obvious targets. But there's also some non-obvious targets, like a single family household, because the parent is working and the children or child has a lot of time alone. A home that has both parents who work a lot. A home that you have some special needs maybe in the family, and there's a lot of attention going to one particular child or one particular individual and not enough to the others. If you have a large family with a lot of kids and a lot of chaos kind of around it, it's anybody susceptible to this if their emotional needs are not being met. So if they're not receiving nurturing, if they're not receiving validation, if they're not receiving that attention, well, we're automatically going to be in search of that because we as people desire those things. So we're going to be looking for that, and perpetrators are going to recognize that and feed into that for a lot of children. And the way that they do this is they're going to slowly and gradually introduce sexually inappropriate things, and not even just sexually inappropriate, but just they're going to be boundary breakers. They're going to be rule breakers. So it can be, that they start to introduce tobacco, that they start to introduce alcohol, that they start to introduce, staying out past curfew, going somewhere where they're not supposed to be, skipping school. It can be as simple as that, in ways that we're starting to introduce inappropriate things to the child. Then we start to think about, okay, well, now it's moving its way to sexually inappropriate things. So that can be as far as, just inappropriate jokes, the introduction of adult relationships on a young person, inappropriate content as far as viewing. So like television shows, pornography, magazines, social media. Social media is a really big one. So they're going to slowly start to introduce those things, and it will just become more and more severe as time goes on. So it could be as simple as, oh yeah, when I'm with coach so-and-so, jokes are kind of told about, and we have locker room talk, and it's no big deal. Then we went over to his house, and he said, I'm going to take a quick shower, guys. And he comes out, and oops, his towel drops. And, oh, sorry, guys. Puts his towel back on, goes and gets dressed. Nothing bad happens other than the exposure, but what that's doing is it's desensitizing, right? Everybody just kind of looks and is like, oh, that's weird, but nobody's talking about it. It happened. Okay, we're now starting to desensitize. That's a process that's starting to happen. Then we move to actual physical touch, right? So it can be as simple as, starts out innocently with, I'm going to touch your arm when I'm talking to you. I'm going to start to hold my hand there a little bit longer as I'm talking to you. I'm going to start to maybe rub your arm as I'm talking to you. I'm going to maybe start to rub your legs then, because you've been desensitized to the arm. Then I'm going to start to maybe put my hand around your waist. Then I'm going to start to go a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further, until eventually that child becomes desensitized to that and doesn't even think anything of it when this person comes to touch them on a regular basis. So it is a gradual process. It is a slow process. It's a very intentional process. It's not like the groomer, the perpetrator, picks somebody up and all of a sudden an act is committed and that's the end of it. That there are a lot of unfortunate situations where that does happen, obviously, but that's not what we're talking about right now. Right now, what we're talking about is grooming for more opportunity for longer exposure to harm and inappropriate conduct. So with that being said, it's again a slow and gradual, methodical, thought out process. It's not accidental. It's not, not intentional. It's not that, well, maybe they didn't know. It's not that, well, I guess I should have known better. It has nothing to do with any of that. That person who is the groomer, who is the perpetrator, is very much in control. They very much understand what they're doing, and they understand so much so that it's wrong that they had to groom you and the gatekeepers in the process to gain that trusted access with you. Because if it weren't wrong, then obviously it wouldn't have to be this thing that were done in private. So common behaviors that we'll see with groomers are maybe, gift giving, kid magnet activities. So, oh, John down the street, he's always got, the jump house at his house. He doesn't have any kids, but he's always got the jump house out in his front yard for the neighborhood kids. He's so friendly. Repeated time alone with the same adult, same child. Touchy with kids, breaking their boundaries. So again, not just, here's a quick hug or high five, fist bump, but really hanging on to that kid, putting that kid on their lap, kind of massaging them, really touchy type things. Playful but inappropriate. So again, with like the inappropriate jokes, innuendos, where you might see where they're joking about adult content, things like that. And then breaking rules. So like the tobacco, the alcohol, the skipping school, the being where you're not supposed to be, the secret keeping, all of those things. So while none of those things automatically makes somebody a perpetrator, when we see a pattern of somebody using a lot of these things together, we want to start to really evaluate, look at, understand, talk to our younger people about that, really investigate that relationship. I hope this has helped with understanding grooming a little bit more. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave a comment, and I'll talk to you soon.